Okay, so for our last method for factoring, we're going to use factoring by grouping. So looking at our worksheet, we're going to go ahead and start with number 7 as an example. Okay, so I'm doing these video notes during my 5th period class, so if you hear noise in the background, it's just Gerber making a bunch of noise. So starting with number 7. So factoring by grouping, we want to group together terms where we can factor out a greatest common factor. So for example, we could group these two together, and we can group these two together. Can you see how we can factor out an x squared out of both of those terms? And in this one we can factor out a 4. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to factor each group separately. So again, we're going to factor out our x squared out of the first term, and then here we're going to factor out a 4. Now you know you did it right when these two groups match. If they don't match, either you group them wrong or you factor incorrectly. Next thing we're going to do is we have two terms here. We have this term on the left of the plus and this term on the right. Notice that these two terms have an x plus 1 in common. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out an x plus 1 out of both terms. So if I factor an x plus 1 out of the first term, I'm left with x squared. If I factor an x plus 1 out of the second term, I'm left with plus 4. And I'm done. Okay, next example we're going to do is number 10. My 5th period class is being very quiet for some reason. They don't know quite what to think about this. So number 10. All right, what do we want to group together? I think what we'll do here is we'll just leave these two together here because we can factor out an n squared out of both and a 4. And here we can factor out a 5 out of both of those. Let's see how it goes. So just doing these two first. I'm going to factor out, like I said, a greatest common factor of 4 and an n squared. Okay, so we get 5n plus 3. Factoring out a 5 out of both of those terms, we get 5n plus 3. Did I do it correctly? How do I know I did it correctly? That's right, Gracie. The two groups are the same. So we know we did the grouping correctly. So we're going to factor out a 5n plus 3 out of both terms. So factoring out of the first term, we're left with 4n squared. Factoring it out of the second term, we're left with a 5. Pretty neat, huh? Well, let's do just one more. Let's do one that's a little more complicated. I know, Nathan, you want me to do 21. Okay, 21 it is. I think Gerber had way too much sugar last night. So remember, we want to group terms together where we know we can factor out a common factor. So what I notice here is I see a y in this term and a y in this term. So I think I'm going to go ahead and group those together. Remember, if it doesn't work out, we just go back to the drawing board. And then I have both of these have an x. So I think I'll put those together. And let's go ahead and start factoring. So out of this first one, I'm going to go ahead and factor out 6 and a y. So that's going to be 4x plus 7. Okay, so now over here, you're thinking, okay, well, what in the world can we factor out of 64 and 112? Well, we know that we want this to be a 4x plus 7. So 4 times what is 64? Well, that's 16. And we're going to factor out an x. So 16 times 4 is 64. 16 times 7 is 112. So there you go. Okay, factoring out our 4x plus 7. We get 6y plus 16x. And no video, no quiz. Just mark this as done. And we'll see you in class to finish this claw tomorrow. Perfect timing. See you, Gerber.